May the force be with you, fellow Star Warriors. Alright, we are going to be watching the final episode, the season finale of Andor. And it's the 12th episode. It's called Rick's Road. Alright, so Ferrix is going to become the hotbed of rebellion activity. It's going to spark off that revolutionary factor in Cassian Andor that we have been watching build up ever since the first episode. So I'll be writing my review at the same time. So this is going to be an edited together series of reactions, and here watching with me are Grandmaster Yoda, may the force be with you, and of course the Lord of the Dark Side, Darth Vader. Alright, so with that, let me get the episode rolling and let's see how this goes. So as we head into the season finale, I want a few questions answered by the end of this episode for this season. What has this series shown us? What are the takeaways, IRL? Or is it just another hype builder? It has a 54-minute total runtime, which I saw as soon as I started watching it, which should be plenty of time to complete the Kafkaesque metamorphosis that Cassa Andor is undergoing. His childhood brought him and his fellow child tribe in contact with the Empire because an Empire ship crash landed onto their planet. And his foster parents also picked him up from there, so that was the budding point of his childhood, or rather his teenage years, and now as an adult he's just a petty criminal who would say murdered a couple of security officers in the first episode, and that is the trigger point for this entire series and how he got onto this path of not very convincing and against his wishes rebellion. Okay, and the next thing about his coming from his foster parents is that his mother died yesterday or maybe today. But cameos aside, the production values and acting have been at par with usual Star Wars series like Boba Fett or Bad Batch, which are okay and good series in themselves, but obviously nowhere near Mandalorian levels. And Taika Waititi as that droid was of course the best cameo in these series. Also Andy Serkis as Kino, the supervisor in the labor camp that Andor is sent to in Narkina 5. That cameo was excellent as well. I won't call it a cameo, it was more like a full-fledged character. And the worst part was he could not escape as easily as the others did because he could not swim. So that was nice. Okay, so before we begin in earnest, I'm going to be dropping a link to my previous episode reviews in the description. You can check that out, as well as the other Star Wars reviews that I've done. Okay, so finally, on with the show. The recap beckons us. Okay, so a lightning quick recap. The heist that Andor was on was the one in which he was shown a manifesto for the rebellion by a young recruit, and Mon Mothma, who is part of the galaxy's sort of parliament, is in money trouble because she has been channeling funds for the rebellion. More money, more problems. But this is for a good cause. Well, the leader of the heist is also cousin to Mon, and they are from Chandrila. So I like that because it's a combination of two Indian terms. Chand is of course the moon, and the LA, the La at the end, is added to names of places which are the high mountain passes in the Himalayas. So Chandrila could mean the land of moon's high passes or the moon of high passes. So excellent wordplay going on there. Unlike some of the other naming things in Star Wars that are like sort of half-baked. But kidding aside, they are all pretty nice. Okay, the ISB, which is the Star Wars version of the KGB. The KGB will wait for no one. Is closing in on Andor via his home planet and his mother's funeral, of course, which he is bound to attend. And in the opening scenes, up till now, we are about 6 minutes into the episode. we have two bombs brewing. So one bomb is that Dedra Miro, the villain, the ISB official who has been on Andor's case since the beginning, is in Ferrix for the funeral, and the second is a literal bomb being built by someone. Boom! Just kidding, none of the bombs have gone off yet. But wait, here's what's happened in the next 10 minutes or so. On the capital planet, Coruscant, Mon Mothma's driver is spying on her, and her husband's gambling is undermining her political reputation. Her cousin Vel, who I just mentioned, has also come to Ferrix, where Cassian's sister, who he was looking for in the very first scene of the series, when he was bullied by the two security guards that he ended up killing, which started off this whole manhunt. So Cassian's sister is also at their home planet, and she's keeping lookout for them. And Vel and her are a couple. Andor drops into his hometown because he knows all the back alleys and nobody can detect him that way. But what he didn't expect was a couple of guard dog aliens on chains in the back of Pegla's workshop, who he has just met and who is offering his condolences on his mother's passing. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I've written more instances of Star Wars names sounding Indian in my reviews, so check them out. The link is in the description. On with the show. So as the major characters are gathering on Ferrix, there is a long monologue from the manifesto that I had mentioned earlier during the recap. The villain, the ISB supervisor called Dedra Miro, wants the hero, Cassian Andor, to be taken alive. Taken is a great movie franchise and action blockbuster starring Liam Neeson, of course, Ra's al Ghul from The Dark Knight, I Am Batman. And Alive is a very sober film about a football team that crashed in the Andes in South America, and they had to resort to cannibalism of their dead fellow flyers to survive and to wait for rescue. But leave those movies aside. Dedra Miro, the ISB supervisor, is dissatisfied with how the ISB seniors handled squashing a rebellion, a small rebellion in which a secondary character was sacrificed off screen. But he was sacrificed, or rather his unit was sacrificed by the main instigator of the rebellion, who actually enlisted Andor into the rebellion's cause in that heist which they pulled off. So that guy's name is Luthen. He's played by Thor's Erik Selvig, Dr. Selvig, Stellan Skarsgård, and he is actually on the planet to kill Andor because Andor has seen his face, and if he gets captured by Dedra Miro, then he might spill his guts. We are almost at the half time of this episode, and it's the calm before the storm. So the entire town has gathered for the funeral of Andor's mother, and now it's basically all major characters in one place, and it's time for the final countdown. Stone and sky, stone and sky. This is the chanting by the town, which is followed by a hologram projected by B2 Emo, the droid whose name encourages us all to be a little emo. Okay, the holy hologram Mother Andor lifts up the people with a rousing rebel speech, and so the action begins. Andor, meanwhile, under the cover of the commotion, makes it to Bix, who was imprisoned by Dedra Miro in the hotel on Ferrix, which was serving as the base for the ISB. And Bix is the lady who had got him in touch with Luthen, the rebel leader in the first place. So Luthen, like I said, is played by Dr. Selvig of Thor fame, and Stellan Skarsgård is the name. I like the name Luthen also because if you put an I in the middle, it becomes Luthien, which makes it the better half of Beren and Luthien, a very powerful love saga epic by Tolkien, whose Rings of Power sort of disappointed me. But alright, let's not mix too many franchises in here. And boom! A well-directed throw by the bomber sets off a chain reaction, and the people of the town clash with the stormtroopers, the black and white stormtroopers of the Empire. So lots of action happens, many bad guys kill good people, but the good will win, of course. It kind of reminds me of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, about which I made a short and which is in my Ladakh trip video. You can check it out, and of course, if you would like to visit Ladakh, make sure your trip has zero impact and just keep track of all your trash and dispose everything in the proper places. Please don't leave any plastic behind in the Himalayas, because it doesn't go away. Okay. Alright, so the real surprise is that Cyril, the stalker of Dedra Meero, saves her from the mob. And this is kind of a very stretched out, very unbelievable, as far as sci-fi stories go, strand that somehow I felt didn't really fit in, but I guess they had to set up something for the second season, right? Okay, so the rebel leaders of Ferrix, which is Jazz, a lady, one of the daughters of Ferrix, Brasso, the good friend of Andor, who sort of helps him get over the regrets about his family, Bix, the lady who introduced Andor to Luthen and got this whole thing started, B2 Emo, the droid, and the bomber. I don't see his name come up because he speaks very little in the episode. So they get on a ship and they're sent away by Cassian Andor and Pagal Pegla. Alright, so the final 5 minutes have headed into Coruscant, which is the lavish capital city of the galaxy during this time of the Empire's reign. No Jedis in sight. The Jedis have barely been mentioned at this point of time in the Star Wars saga. So yeah, I guess these prequel series and spin-offs are doing pretty well. Now I'll give my final thoughts after the end of this episode, which has a total of 7 minutes remaining. So given the credits, I guess it'll be a couple of minutes of setting up for the second season. Alright then, the Mothma family meets the Skulden family from Chandrila. Sergeant Mosk, left behind by Cyril Karn, who got together with his stalking interest Dedra Meero, drowns out his sorrows in the bottom of a hip flask. Luthen is surprised on his ship by Andor, who knows that he came to Ferrix to kill him. They join forces. So that, my fellow Star Warriors, is the end of the first season of Andor. And we did learn a few things about how rebellions are built and how small little actions build up into huge consequences. We can fight climate change the same way. And of course, science fiction drives space and technology, science and technology forward. And what are your thoughts? Drop a comment and smash that sub button so that the force may continue to be with you. Thanks so much for reading/watching. PS, post-credit scene. So, like you can see on the screen, the Death Star is nearing completion, and the part that Cassian Andor and his fellow workmates in the labor camp on Narkina 5 were making is part of the Death Star. So Cassian Andor has played a literal hand in creating the Death Star, which of course he will go on to help destroy when Rogue One happens. So this is going to lead almost straight into the events of Star Wars Rogue One. And if there is a second season, of course there is a second season, that will be in the intervening time between this season finale and when he catches up with Jyn to steal those plans from her father, Galen Erso. Alright, so thanks again for watching, and namaste, take care and stay safe.